our first preliminary introduction of the panel, followed by our national anthem. And then in the meantime, once Mr. Vinay Shroff of JSW joins, we can get started. So in the meantime, you can start. So with your kind permission, Sushimda and Dr. Firoz and Jain Saab, namaskar and warm welcome to you.
Namaskar.
So Mr. Sumendra Jain is the CFO of SMS India, Southeast Asia, South Asia, and SMS, as we all know, we call them one of the three biggest darlings, and SMS has been instrumental in providing technology and equipments for almost all the steel plants in India. So we are fully aware of SMS. And Dr. Firoz and Sushimda, they don't need no introduction. Sushimda has been associated with this industry for almost 35, 40 years now, more than that.
40 years.
40 years. Initially with Steel Authority of India Limited SAIL, and then he went to took over as Director General of INSDAG, and after that, after his superannuation from INSDAG, he is now the CEO of Iron and Steel Sector Council. And anything that Sushimda, I did not add, you can add if anything I missed out.
No, it's more than sufficient.
Yeah, he is the CEO of Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council, right, and former Director General of INSDAG and former ED of SAIL. So Dr. Mukesh Kumar is also joining. Dr. Mukesh Kumar was the Director of SRTMI, Steel Research and Technology Mission of India, and now he is advisor to Dr. Mukesh Kumar is now advisor to JSPL Advisory Services, and someone who again needs no introduction at all. So with that, Ankit, it's over to you to Mukesh Kumar Saab, with your kind permission, we are starting right away.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ankit.
Yeah, thank you for all the introductions. And as you mentioned, we will have to start without our keynote speaker. He will be joining after in around 30 minutes or so. So we will begin. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to all the panelists, all the attendees who have joined us today. And we are also streaming live on YouTube. So welcome to everyone watching on our live stream on YouTube as well. So we would like to welcome you to our 48th webinar. So this is the 48th webinar. We have done 47 webinars before since the beginning of 2020. And the webinar today is titled Impact of the Union Budget on Indian Steel Industry in FY24, organized by Steel and Metallurgy. A warm welcome to our gold sponsors, JSW Steel and Jindal Steel and Power. I will now introduce our panelists. So just let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So first we have Mr. V.R. Sharma as our keynote speaker. He's the Vice Chairman, JSPL Group Advisory Services Private Limited. Then we have Mr. Vinay Shroff, Chief Marketing Officer, JSW Steel Limited. Mr. Sumendra Jain, CFO, India and Asia Pacific Region, SMS India Private Limited. Dr. Mukesh Kumar, Advisor, JSPL Group Advisory Services. Mr. Sushim Banerjee, CEO, Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council and former Executive Director, Steel Authority of India Limited. Mr. Rajamani Krishnamurthy, President, Indian Steel Development Association, Indian Stainless Steel Development Association, also known as ISDA. Dr. A.S. Firoz, he's a consultant. He works for major consultant firms. Mr. Vipul Vinayak, Partner, Ernst & Young. Mr. Ritabroto Ghosh, Vice President and Sector Head, ICR Limited. Mr. Rajiv Maitra, Director, Deloitte Consulting. So these are all our panelists for today. Before we move forward, I would just share a few guidelines, which I think we are all familiar with now, since we are quite accustomed with the age of webinars. But just to remind everyone, the few guidelines for smooth platform management. So for all the attendees who have joined us on Zoom to listen to our discussion, we have a Q&A section in Zoom. So it can be accessed by the panelists as well as the attendees. So to all the attendees, I would request you to post your questions and queries in the Q&A section, and then the panelists can, it is visible to the panelists and they can choose to either answer it live or directly in the chat. I would also request all the panelists to keep their microphones muted when the other panelists are speaking, just to avoid any kind of noise feedback. And last but not the least, I would request everyone to adhere to the time limit as given in the program to avoid any delays. So today's webinar will be moderated by my father, Mr. Nirmalya Mukherjee. On behalf of Steel and Metallurgy, our sponsors, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar. We will have our national anthem first, followed by which we will display a few corporate videos by our sponsors. So I would request everyone to please rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you, Ankit. Just a quick reminder, can you upgrade Mr. Vinay Shroff? He's already joined it, Ankit Pradipta just mentioned. So if you can just upgrade him to the panel.
Yeah, sure, of course.
I think he's there in the audience. You have to upgrade him to the panel.
Yeah, I think
you see Vinay JSW has. He's upgraded to the panel.
Yes.
Yeah. Vinay ji,
Shroff, can you hear us?
very good afternoon to you. Good to see you after almost 4 years. I remember in 2019, Shushinda was also there in the same conference in Calcutta where you had addressed us. And the then governor of West Bengal, who's now the Vice President of India, was with us on that occasion. So you were next to the present Vice President of India and the then governor. In 2019, you were there in our conference before the pandemic. So good to see you after almost 4 years. At that period of time, you were in charge of flat products, EVP flat products. Now you are head of the entire marketing, both flat and long, and the entire team of JSW marketing reports to you. So good to see you do so well in this company, and a very, very warm welcome to you. So since Mr. V.R. Sharma will be joining around 5:30, so you will become the first and keynote speaker, in absence of Mr. V.R. Sharma right now. So you will have to cover almost the entire gamut of what the budget had to offer, including, let's say, the capex allocation of 10 lakh crore, the highest ever allocation of 2.4 lakh crore for the railways, then the first and last mile connectivity for steel, ports, coal, with an investment of 75,000 crore to improve our logistics. Then also issues like income tax rebate, additional airports, heliports, water aerodromes, highest ever expenditure on housing, infrastructure, as we know, and construction almost account for 60% of our steel consumption. Then government scrappage of the old vehicles, extension of waiver of customs duty on scrap, then the green hydrogen, all these issues I'm sure you'll be covering. and how it's going to impact the steel sector during the fiscal year 23-24. So Ankit, could we have the presentations of JSW and JSPL before Mr. Vinay Shroff takes over?
Yeah, so our first video is by JSW Steel.
Thank you, Mr. Shroff. It was excellent presentation by JSW.
It's a really creative video.
Very creative. Yeah. So now we go over to JSPL corporate video.
Yeah. So our next video is by JSPL.
India, a name that resonates with growth, progress, and infrastructure will always be a key driver of its growth story. With steel as its backbone, Jindal Steel and Power is committed to building a self-reliant India. With interests in steel and mining, JSP is a key driver of the resurgent India. JSP is testimony to the vision of a pioneering nation builder, Shri Om Prakash Jindal, who showed what small-town India can dream and accomplish. JSP's growth story runs parallel to that of India. From a single unit in Hisar in 1952, JSP has grown to be a leading Indian conglomerate. India's growth engine runs on the rails made by JSP. At its head-hardened rail manufacturing facility at Raigarh, a testimony to the Make in India campaign. India's first and only plant equipped to manufacture single-piece rails of up to 121 meter, which can be further extended up to 484 meter. The Raigarh steel plant in Chhattisgarh is one of the largest sponge iron manufacturing facilities in the world. Spread over 3,500 acres, the Angul steel plant in Odisha is India's most modern setup that houses India's first and only coal gasification-based DRI plant. The Patratu plant in Jharkhand manufactures India's favorite Jindal Panther TMT rebars, equipped to withstand shock loading and cyclic loading condition, making them an ideal choice for buildings in high seismic zones. The wire rod mill here is equipped with world-class capabilities to produce value-added steel. Located in the hills of Barbil in Odisha, JSP's 9 MTPA pelletization complex is the largest pellet production facility in the country that was set up in a record time of 23 months. in a journey.
Ankit, can you restart this? Ankit? Ankit, can you hear me?
Sankit, connection has been lost.
His connectivity. I think we have lost connectivity. Ankit, are you okay? Ankit, are you there or have we lost you? I can't see him. Okay, okay. So we'll get back to this once again. In the meantime, am I audible?
Yes,
Yeah.
you are perfectly audible.
Yeah, Ankit.
I'm sorry, my connection just dropped because of which I think the video stopped playing.
Yeah, last part. Can you just play once more, and so that we'll go.
Yes,
just the last
I will just yeah.
My apologies, but I thought in Germany we have better broadband connectivity and better bandwidth. You're worse than India.
Yeah.
We are much better off.
Yeah, India, I mean, internet in India now is just amazing. Okay, so I'll play from around 3.5 minutes.
Dollars in taxes since its inception, providing employment to more than 1 lakh families. Under the able leadership of Mr. Naveen Jindal, JSP saw unparalleled growth and expansion. Many iconic megastructures across India bear testimony to JSP's national commitment. JSP's tradition has been to put people first, be it its employees, communities, and investors. Amongst its various activities, JSP Foundation also runs a unique initiative called Swayam Shilp to promote, preserve, and propagate tribal arts and crafts of India. Through its key initiatives like Kishori Express, Vatsalya Project, Asha the Hope, the foundation has brought a positive change in the lives of communities around its plants in its endeavor to provide quality and affordable healthcare to the local communities and societies at large. JSP has set up multi-speciality Fortis OP Jindal Hospital and Research Center in Raigad and Tamnar. In the education sector, the OP Jindal Global University, a non-profit global university promoted by JSP, has consistently been ranked amongst the world's top and India's best. The OP Jindal University in Raigad, Chhattisgarh provides industry-aligned academic programs with focus on steel making, manufacturing excellence, steel industry 4.0, steel logistics, and steel global markets. As a building block in the self-reliant India story, JSP succeeds when India grows.
Thank you, Ankit.
So now over to our session moderator, and I would like to thank JSW and JSPL for sponsoring this event. And my apologies to JSPL for the interruption in between the video. So now over to our session moderator, Mr. Nimalya Mukherjee, editor, Steel and Metallurgy, to carry the session forward.
Yeah, thank you, Ankit. So, as they say, when the son leaves, the father takes off. So, thank you, Ankit. Thank you once again. So, with that, warm welcome to Dr. Firoz, Mr. Shushim Banerjee, Mr. Vinay Shroff, Mr. Sumendra Jain, Dr. Mukesh Kumar, and all the other panelists who are likely to join soon. So, with that, we'll move straight into what the fiscal budget, which is seen as a very progressive budget by many. And, you know, as we tend to call it the Saptashi budget, and the first in Amrit Kal. So that's how we would like to take off with the initial thoughts from none other than Mr. Vinay Shroff, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of JSW and someone who has spent a whole career, I would say, right from handling the flat product segment to the entire gamut of the product line of JSW. And I'm sure he has a lot to share with us. So over to you, Mr. Vinay Shroff. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nirmalia. And good afternoon to all my fellow panelists, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity, Steel and Metallurgy, for this wonderful, I know it is going to be wonderful session on the impact of the budget on the steel industry. You rightly said, Amritkal, first budget, Saptarishi budget as it is called. I will just try to I have looked a little deeper into the budget, and before going into the impact about how it is going to have on the steel industry, just share, I feel this budget seems to be providing a cushion for the Indian economy very, very proactively. And if I really look at that, it's a very proactive budget, which not only ensures there is going to be growth, but if there is any likely issue or a problem which the world might face, Indian economy is going to be very, very resilient and robust. I think that is what this budget is. This budget seems quite positive for the economy, as it addresses not just the demand side, but the supply side as well. Both the concerns have got addressed. So if I look at it, this is how the budget is appearing to me. A large capex spending would crowd in the private sector, now which has been missing in the investment cycle for so long. So that will crowd in the private sector and create a multiplier impact on the economy. That is one of the things which I think is likely to happen. And obviously it will solve the supply side concern, as I was mentioning, along with supporting job creation. Now that is going to be very, very important, because this budget is really focused on the capex, on the investments. We'll talk about that. Therefore, triggering the job creation, which is likely to happen. Even the tax benefits, we see there are a lot of tax benefits which has been given. It can shore up the demand side. So we are looking at both the supply and demand side to really spur the growth, which is anticipated in the coming years in India. Before I go into the Indian context and the steel industry, a little bit on the global side, very important to really try and see what is happening on the global side. Global inflation has moderated from 8.8% in 2022 in general. It is likely to be just about half of it, almost come down to half of it in FY or in calendar year 24. So in the next 2 years, we see a softening as far as the inflation is concerned to about 4.4% globally. A very, very significant development which is likely to happen coupled with that. We will, along with that, and that is what is triggered, the rate of monetary tightening, which we have seen happen in the last 12 months, has softened. That is really softened, and that will help reduce the intensity of contraction. The contraction not only in demand, but in the economic growth. I think worldwide, so the impact of coming down of inflation, the monetary tightening, intensity reducing, very, very positive as far as the global economic is concerned. India's inflation likely to moderate. We all know about 5% in FY24 from 6.7, what we are likely to see in 23. Strong GDP growth anticipated in FY24, anywhere between 6 to 7, 6.5%, the fastest growing in the large economy. Now, that is the type of backdrop we are really talking about as far as the India's growth in the next 1 year and related to the budget. All of this will help promote demand and growth in the economy. The important side from the investment, and before we get into the capex investment, the total investment announced for the FY23 is almost 25 trillion, which is more than double, which was 10 trillion in FY21. So 2.5 times of the capex or the total investment in 2 years' time is a very, very significant increase in the investment plan. Similarly, during this period, it is not only the government investment, and this is very, very significant, not only the government investment, but the share of the private investment is going to go up from 50% to almost 65%. And so the private sector investment coming back along with the government is steep increase in the overall investment. And all this is definitely visible coming straight to the steel part. All this is very visible in the steel consumption, what we are likely to see in this financial year. I won't be surprised if we are looking at a 12% growth or a demand consumption, apparent consumption going up by about 12%. What does it really mean? We are talking of 106 million going to 118, 19, or 120 million is what we at least in JSW anticipate. It might be even touching those levels. And that is the type of optimism which is there after the budget, especially in the steel industry. This momentum is likely to continue based on the announcements made in the budget, a very, very good news for all of us. And some of the focus schemes impacting all of us positively for the steel industry. And the key obviously being the infrastructure and the investments involved. Net capital investment, 10 trillion, up 33%, a very, very visible headline number all of us are talking about, all of us are very gung-ho about. Effective budget outlay and therefore total 13.7 trillion, including the state grants and the loan. And if I add the capex by the central public sector enterprises, which is almost about 5 trillion, we are really talking about total capital investment, capital outlay of nearly 18.5 trillion, which is more than 21% compared to the current year. So a 21% growth to 18.5 trillion is again a very significant. All of this going into capex, infrastructure, highly steel intensive, as Mr. Nirmalia mentioned. Infrastructure, more than 2/3 of steel goes into infra, and obviously this is going to boost the other sectors as well. The key here is the railway. Obviously, we all know the railway, the type of budget outlay for railway, talking of 2.4 trillion, more than 75% increase, is one of the highest we have ever seen, 51% higher than the revised estimate, but highest ever and 9 times in the last decade. So the railway outlay being more than 9 times in the last decade is one of the most significant as far as the steel industry is concerned. Very, very optimistic about that. Similarly, on the road, we all know what is 2.6 trillion going up to about by 38%, housing 66%, defense, energy, logistics, we name it, each of the infrastructure segments, which is a part of the NIP, if I can say, we are seeing a huge outlay which has been planned. More than that, I think the good news is it's not just the investment in the infrastructure, but if you really look at 100 new critical transport projects. Now, we all know the logistics cost in our country is probably one of the highest in the world. And for an economy our size, we cannot afford that 13, 14% type of logistics cost. Now, therefore, this 100 critical transport projects for the first and last mile connectivity for different sectors, whether it's steel, port, fertilizer, chemicals, very significant move by the government. Along with that, I think all of us, we are all committed to the sustainability, net zero carbon emission. And if you really look at from that perspective, significant announcements being made by the government, most important being the 5 million ton of the green hydrogen by 2030, going to attract more than about 20,000 crores as far as the investment is concerned. And those 100 critical projects I mentioned earlier, 750 billion, 75,000 crores. So the energy transition investment going from fossil fuel to both wind and solar, talking of another 35,000 crores. Along with that, the urban infra and the new one, 50 additional airports, heliports, water aerodromes. I think all this is really going to spur the demand as far as the steel sector is concerned. So the momentum, I feel, we believe very, very firmly of what we are seeing this year is likely to continue in the next 2 years. We anticipate a demand next year and to continue at the same pace. Won't be surprised if it is closer to 130 million tons next year, which is going to be a very, very significant jump. In 2 years, you're talking of nearly 25% growth. Very important as far as the steel industry is concerned. One thing which I missed out was on the automotive sector. Big announcement on supporting the EVs. Obviously, the completely built unit, including EV, is now 70% the duty hiked in that, from 60 to 70, promoting what is made in India, the whole concept of that. Similarly, the semi-knockdown kit, 30 to 35%. But look at what has happened to the battery side. So we are really looking at promoting the EV, the sustainability in our the country's target of becoming a net zero carbon by 2070. So another very significant announcement as far as the government is concerned. MSMEs, not to forget about them, backbone of any investment, any economy, backbone of the manufacturing contribution to the GDP. Our MSME, India's MSME is lagging behind compared to the contribution being made by the global MSMEs in the GDP, in the manufacturing GDP component by a significant amount. To really make up for that, fast track, I think this whole revamp of the credit guarantee scheme with a corpus of 9,000 crores is something which is very, very critical. It's just not 9,000 crores, it will spur a lending of more than 2 trillion, and that too at a much lower interest rate. So the MSME part is a very significant, and based on some of the analysis we have done, there are more than 125,000 MSMEs who are really consuming steel and metal, and they are more than 1 crore turnover. So very significant portion of the entire MSME basket is there in the steel industry. So very important as far as that is concerned. Apart from that, vehicle scrapping policy, a very good thing to show lead from the front by the government to scrap 15-year-old vehicle, more than 15-year-old by all the state and the central government vehicles. I think, again, a very positive as far as we are concerned. Coastal shipping, PM Awas Yojana, all getting a additional boost. And we can go on. All of us can really go on as far as these capex investments are concerned. So in a nutshell, if I can really try to summarize from this aspect in terms of the contribution or the impact of the budget as far as steel industry is concerned, with the Indian economy moving above the pre-pandemic levels, and we are really now 5th largest as far as the economy is concerned, it is important for India to be able to create a robust domestic market which would allow it to leverage its demographic dividend. And that's the way at least I look at it, and bring in continuous growth. So the whole growth engine, I think, is all now set to fire in all cylinders, and this budget is definitely going to help not just the growth of steel, but overall growth. All in all, a very positive budget for the steel industry is the way I look at it. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're on mute, Mr. Nirmal. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Vinayji, thank you so much. And I'm really happy that you also touched upon the very critical issue of EVs. Yes. I was listening to Sajanji when he was talking at Davos during the World Economic Forum, where he clearly mentioned the interest of JSW to enter the EV segment. And I'm sure JSW will be launching a EV vehicle sooner than later, where we'll have the most advanced EV available in this country.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I believe the philosophy at JSW presently is, to enter that segment, and which Mr. Jain, I'm sure, will also highlight, since Mr. Daman, your global CEO, Mr. Daman is a firm believer of EV business for the future, which also saw primarily on the decarbonization efforts. So Vinayji also touched upon the vehicle scrappage policy for the state government and the central government, which I'm sure will not only give an opportunity for the automobile sector, but also create a good availability of quality scrap in this country. So we'll have a good availability of quality scrap. And fortunately, JSW is a producer which uses all the raw materials, right from virgin iron ore to scrap, and the Dolvi plant, for example, is a very flexible unit which can use 100% scrap to 100% hot metal. So it has a very flexible production facility available at Dolvi, and JSW uses all the steel making routes in this country. So once again, thank you, Vinayji. And from a CMO, we move to a CFO. So Mr. Sumendra Jain, who is the Chief Financial Officer, CFO of SMS, and SMS again needs no introduction. All the steel plants of JSW, JSPL, SAIL, Tata Steel, RINL, and ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel uses some equipment of SMS or the other, and some technology of SMS or the other. So I'm sure Mr. Jain will have to share with us what SMS or how SMS looks at this budget in terms of future growth of steel industry in this part of the world. So over to you, Mr. Sumendra Jain, CFO of SMS India and Asia Pacific.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mukherjee. Good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be part of this August gathering. And thank you, Mr. Mukherjee, for inviting us and Steel and Metallurgy team for having this opportunity to interact with all of you. Just a quick introduction, which Mr. Mukherjee has just referred about the SMS Group. SMS Group is a global technology company and leading partner for the steel and metal industry. And actually, as you rightly said, our mission is to kind of support the steel producers and manufacturers in developing the profitable and more efficient and climate neutral value chains around that. And we have a large presence across the globe with more than about 14,000 employees. I think you touched upon a very important perspective of the budgets. You briefed around a lot of stuff around that, and Mr. Shroff also talked about some of the features. I'll also try and reiterate, and then I will also talk about the carbon emission, the green steel, the future technology which we are talking about, and how SMS is going to play a major role for our steel producers around that. So in the 75th year of our independence and Amrit Kal, which has now been called as the era, actually the world has recognized the Indian economy as a bright star. Everybody recognizes that India is definitely now a major player in the global setup around that. India's economic growth is likely to be between 6 to 7%, which is going to be better than most of the global major economies around that. And this is in spite of all the challenges which we are seeing on the China story, on the Ukraine-Russia war story. Indian economy has shown a lot of signs of resilience around that. The budget, to my view, reflects the government's determination to promote long-term development. This is something which they have been talking about, and in the last couple of years, this has been demonstrated around that also. Mr. Shroff also referred about like a focus on the critical infrastructure like railways and airports to improve the regional connectivity. And this will definitely lead to a lot of economic spurt in the growth, and will lead to a lot of employment generation, which is one of a bigger issue for a country like India. And unemployment has always been talked about, and opposition also claims a lot of stuff around that. But this will really be a move towards having some impact on the employment perspective. And then obviously it will give a lot of fillip to the ancillary sectors, specifically related to our infrastructure, which is on the steel and cement. To have an overall impact analysis on the steel industry, I think we have to see the various measures. And I'll not go into the detail because Mr. Shroff has already demonstrated a lot of stuff on the overall perspective. The capital outlay of 10 lakh crores will definitely help to get the right momentum on the picking up the demand for the steel and other infrastructure companies. This focus on infrastructure and construction will be really important, as we see the rail and transportation infrastructure projects will get a lot of momentum around that. And the urban infrastructure in tier 2 and tier 3 cities will really be boosting a lot of focus on steel demand around that. If you really see, FM has announced in capital outlay of about 2 lakh crores for Indian Railways, which is highest ever, and it's almost about 9 times of what we have seen in 2013-14. So this will definitely be a big boost to the steel consumption by the railway sector, and we are all seeing that our railways are focusing on the modernization, other stuff around that. So there will be a huge demand for the steel industry. Then we talked about the additional airports, the helipads, the weather aerodromes, and this all will be also improving the air connectivities, and which will really boost the demand for the steel industries. The one of the most important thing which this government has been really talking about, the first to last mile, the air connectivities, this logistics upgradation, which Mr. Shroff also mentioned, that in most of the global economies it is kind of about 8%, but here in India it is between 12 to 14%. And anything which will be ironing out those issues will be definitely a big boost. So this 100 critical transport infrastructure projects will be a big boost with a very significant investments, which government has talked about that. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana is definitely a further step where the increase has been by more than 66%, and the quantums are pretty good. This will also help the industry significantly. If we now really see that the new things which they are talking about for the sustainable growth is by incentivizing cities and the municipal bodies in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns to kind of raise the resources via municipal bonds. This will really be kind of ring fence urban development funds, and this is actually a promise of developing an important financing channel to boost the demand further on that. Vehicle scrap policy is something which is very important. About 900,000 vehicles will be scrapped by the central and state government. This will be really a boost, a big boost, followed by a lot of custom duty exemptions, specifically for the EVs and for other material, will be helpful to kind of reduce the cost of production, which itself has been a very big, sometimes a challenging task for the steel industry. So this will help to kind of sustain on the cost and improve on the profitabilities around that. I think the next important perspective which the government has done in this budget is that they are extending the further interest-free loans to the states, and this will be helpful to boost the infrastructure. They will be able to do it for long-term periods, and this investment of about 1.3 lakh crores is a significant amount towards that. The important perspective, apart from budget announcements, what we have seen, the one which impacts the demand and the further capex plans for the steel industry, is the steel prices. This we have been seeing over the last, specifically with COVID and Russia war, it's been pretty volatile and pretty dynamic around that. These international factors generally determine the price movement, but right now what you're seeing that the domestic demand is also pretty robust. And then by this increased infrastructure spending, which has been announced by the government, this also will have some play in the domestic price realizations, and then this will also kind of impact the kind of capex plans what the steel companies are having. But yes, there is a factor which we are talking about on the China situations and the Europe situations. This will definitely have some leeways, which will also decide about how do we see the steel production being banned in the next few years. On one important perspective, which I think is very important, which government has done, is trying to kind of rejig a little bit on the personal tax rates. This can be an important tool to increase the disposable income in the hands of the consumers, and we see that there can be a momentum towards the two-wheelers and the entry-level cars. So considering all these above aspects, I am also confident that demand from the infrastructure and affordable housing, which constitutes kind of 35% of steel and 40% of the cement, this sector is likely to grow to about 10 to 12%, which Mr. Shroff also kind of conferred around that. And we hope to see that the government, which is talking about a vision of 300 million tons of capacities by 2030 and 500 by 2047, we are moving towards the right perspectives. And if this momentum continues in the next few years, definitely we are talking about the momentum of 7 trillion economy, of making India a 7 trillion economy by 2030. Because you spoke about the green steel and the focus which we are trying to refer about. Let me have a quick perspectives on the green steel and carbon emission aspects also. The metal industry is kind of responsible for approximately 10% of the global greenhouse emissions, which including direct and indirect emissions around that. World Steel Association forecasts that there will be a population growth of about 10 billion to about 10 billion from currently about 8 billion. And the consumptions of this thing will go up from current 235 to 284 by 2050. So this means there will be a lot more further emissions around that. And this has an impact of the vulnerability which we see by way of floods, by way of droughts, or even the sea level rising, increasing global warming, temperatures increase, and other stuff around that. This impact of climate change could be seeing the cost between 2.5 to kind of 7% of the country's GDP, with the poorest bearing the brunt of this burden around that. We at SMS Group are fully aware that a complete change in one go will not be possible. And so we have developed solutions that features a stepwise decarbonization options at both existing facilities or also for the new facilities. I'm very happy to share that we currently are building the world's first carbon neutral steel plant, which is with a Swedish-based company called S2GS. So the future of metal is actually circular. Alongside the classical ore-based integrated solutions, the focus is on recycling, which you spoke about, techniques for scrap, metal bearing, residual materials, and minerals. I think this what we believe is our continuous focus is on the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. So I think the promising situation with the steel requirements and focus on the carbon emission in the next few years' time, we see that Indian momentum also will shift gears, and this infrastructure budget boost will be really making India towards the carbon emission guidelines by 2070 around that. Back to you, Mr. Mukherjee. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Jensab, thank you so much. In fact, you touched upon the very important, decarbonization effort in the steel industry, which globally, any conferences that you tend to attend in Europe and US, the most discussed issue is the decarbonization efforts and use of hydrogen in steel making. That's one of the major issues which I'm sure Dr. Mukesh Kumar will also touch upon, since it is a subject very close to his heart as well. As the director of SFTMI, he has taken up a lot of initiatives towards decarbonization in steel industry and use of technology where hydrogen could perhaps be used as an alternative fuel in steel making. In fact, this is something which you rightly mentioned, SSAB has already done it, and SMS has been a very, I would say, active partner in this decarbonization initiative. So with that in mind, and the contribution which, in fact, Jensab, your organization has made towards, the growth of steel industry in this part of the world, and the fact that today SMS India is the company which represents SMS not only in India but in this part of the world, including countries like Bangladesh, countries like Singapore, Southeast Asia, the entire Southeast, proves that India is the hub. In fact, I was just listening to Mr. Daman this morning. There was a post by Metec organizer Mr. Duzlov on social media today by Mr. Daman. I was listening to him, and where he has mentioned the importance SMS gives to India. So I'm very happy that you touched upon all these issues. And now Dr. Mukesh Kumar will also, being a technocrat, I'm sure he will touch upon that issues related to technology as well, and how this budget could impact our growth, the growth of the steel industry, which is so very critical for the nation's GDP growth. So over to you, Dr. Mukesh Kumar, who is now advisor JSPL Advisory Services, and previously he was the director of Steel Research and Technology Mission of India. Over to you, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Ankit, if you're there, I'll take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, thank you, Mukherjee sir. I think most of the points as far as the demand and other thing is concerned, Srof Saab and Jain Saab has already covered. And he has very rightly mentioned that this is a period for the steel sector to grow further, because the type of opportunities this budget has given, and it has given a future projection also, how the demands will grow. That gives a clear indication that steel industry need to grow. And earlier we were anticipating that we will grow at a rate of 6 to 7% or around 7% only. But looking into the projections given in this budget, that we will be going around 10 lakh crore rupees for the capex budget and additional 3.7 lakh crore for state government. So it means total capex, if you see from the central and state, it is coming to 13.7 lakh crore. And that is a big boost. In railway also, when they mentioned around 31,850 crore rupees for your new lines and around 30,000 crore rupees for gauge change and around 32,000 crore rupees for roll stock. All these things are giving an option that yes, it will be a big demand sector, steel sector. So what we have projected in 2017 policy that we should reach around 300 million ton capacity and around 258 million ton production by 2030. I think we will achieve before that only. The growth will be much better. But the best thing of this budget is what I have seen from the steel production point of view, and to remain globally competitive, that a focus has been brought on the hot topic, that is a climate change. And when we are talking about the climate change, so the one of the big decision or declaration they have made that around 35,000 crore rupees they have made towards green energy transition. So this energy transition factor, what is coming? So it will require big investment in our solar, hydrogen, wind power, and other things also. Although there was no very specific mention about the nuclear power, but the type of news which is coming, government is considering even private participation of the nuclear power also, so that we can move towards green energy movement. Because today, if we see, the cheapest power available is the nuclear power and the least emissions power there. But they are considering small reactors and other things, that is also there. Before budget, they have announced National Hydrogen Mission Plan. And if you see the National Hydrogen Mission Plan also, around 5 million, and that was declared in the budget also, 5 million ton of hydrogen generation by around 2030. That has been planned. And out of that, around 2 million ton is planned for steel sector. So if we look into this thing, that around 0.07 million ton hydrogen is required for each million ton of steel, it means around 30 to 32 million ton of steel we are targeting by 2030 through green hydrogen route. No doubt, we don't have any proven technology right now available for hydrogen, but the type of initiative government, I presume that thing, that whatever way we can increase use of hydrogen, that will help us in moving towards this direction. Some of our gas-based plants are there, like ArcelorMittal is there, JSW is there, where already we are having a gas-based DRI. But in those cases also, we can start like, as far as I remember, that JSW also is planning to increase hydrogen content in our DRI plant making, so that slowly and slowly we move towards the hydrogen making base steel. So that may be one initiative. Similarly, other companies are there who are looking how to decarbonize this sector. Because few days back, there was a news that Vale is looking for how to do away with the pelletization and sintering. In JSPL, we are already considering this technology called briquetting of iron ore, so that we can do away with our pelletization plant, we can do away with our sintering plant, and can minimize at least 20 to 25% of carbon emission from this sector. We are already working with a number of international universities and we are in a very, very advanced stage ki how to move in this direction. And that also, I think what government is saying, ki once you are coming in this green movement path or green growth path, so a lot of incentives and other things may come in that direction. Definitely, there are certain risks are there in the technology risk, but what government is giving a message is that if there are government risks are there, we can cover through viability gap funding. And that's viability gap funding. Viability gap funding is being considered for various such type of initiatives, whether it is bioethanol, whether it is this thing. So I think with the type of intention government has shown in this budget, it is a very, very supporting budget to take initiative towards green direction. And steel, as Jain Saab has told, it is contributing around 7 to 9% in the globally, but in India, its contribution is 12%. But if we continue with this present practice, I think this contribution may go from 12% to 15% or 16% also. So we have to see on all these points. So what I was assuming, although there is no direct declaration or this thing commitment made in this budget, but if we are looking for some carbon recycling or carbon benefits project, I think those projects also will be covered under green growth. And over a period of time, as soon as we develop these technologies, I think we can approach Ministry of Steel and other things also, which is a part of the green growth, and we may get a lot of incentives and other things there also. So as we are working on this carbon recycling also through various institutes like IIT Bombay, IIT Roorkee, NCL Pune, because these institutes are also helping. And one of the things what government has told in this budget is that they want to encourage collaboration between private R&D, government R&D, academia, startup, and venture capital. So this is a very good statement made by the government in the budget, is that we want to promote this R&D. And these R&D is mainly that we can have a green growth development. Once we follow that green growth development, ultimately we are reaching to an inclusive growth as well as the sustainable development also. And this sustainable development path will help us both Indian steel industry, society as a total, and nation as a whole. And then we will be in a position to project ourselves also is one of the most energy efficient and green steel making across the world, because we are iron based. Everybody knows that in iron ore based steel making, reducing emission is difficult. But with these type of initiatives and the type of support government is giving, I think we will break that barrier also, and we may become one of the most favorite location for producing steel on an economical, environmental, and sustainable manner. Thank you, Mukherjee Sahab. This is my outcome, takeoff from the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. As you all know, SRTMI was actually founded by Dr. Mukesh Kumar. He was the first founder director of SRTMI. The whole objective being primarily to indigenize the steel making technologies in this country. And now that he is with JSPL, I'm sure JSPL will have a lot to benefit. And I always keep saying that JSW and JSPL having the same genre and the same DNA, as Sajanji keeps saying, I'm sure both will take a strategy where decarbonization will play a major role in the days and years ahead. And I'm sure the steel industry will benefit from this budget to a great extent, because primarily the expenditure that we see in infrastructure is really something that needs a special appreciation. And this is a time when we were a little skeptical on certain issues, primarily in the second and third quarter, where JSW also did not perform quite well. And it is expected that the fourth quarter, things are likely to improve, and we are likely to, at least get into the takeoff stage once again. So with that, I'll move on to thanking Dr. Mukesh Kumar once again. We'll now move on to our next speaker, since Mr. V.S. Sharma has not joined as of now. We'll wait for him. But in the meantime, may I request Mr. Sushim Banerjee, CEO, Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council, and former Director General of INSDAG, Institute for Steel Development and Growth, and someone who has worked very closely with the major producers. So over to you, Sushimda. Right now, he's the CEO of Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council. So we need to skill up our steel industry, and Sushimda has taken that job. So after Sushimda, it's going to be Dr. Firoz, who again has worked very closely with the Ministry of Steel as the Chief Economist of Economic Research Unit of JPC. So Dr. Firoz, I'm sure, will have much more to add after Sushimda. So over to you, Sushimda. Mr. Sushim Banerjee, CEO, Iron and Steel Sector Skill Council, and former Director General INSDAG and former Executive Director, Steel Authority of India Limited. So over to you, Sushimda.
Thank you, Nirmal. Thank you, Ankit. I must thank Steel and Metallurgy Group and their team to organize this very current topic of what is the impact of the budget, particularly on steel industry. Now, I must say that I have very little to add what Mr. Binay Shroff and Mr. Jain has added, and after that, very erudite speaker like Dr. Mukesh Kumar on green steel. I have nothing more to add. But what I would like to do is to highlight some of the specifics, just doing justice to the today's theme, some of the very basic specifics that the budget has brought forward, and in what way this will impact the steel consumption and demand in the year FY24, because that is what the budgetary recommendations are. But I tend to agree with Mr. Jain when he said that there are some long-term implications for also some medium that the budget has made. So definitely I agree with that. So the first is that the budget is based on, if you will recall, a few days before the presentation of the budget, there is an economic survey. And the economic survey gives a very detailed analysis of how the economy has performed in the current year, that is FY23. And then the budget places all its recommendations for the next year, that is FY24. So I think these two can be taken together to form our view of what the economy is going to be like. Mr. Shroff has already mentioned there will be some repetition, because steel industry's growth is very intricately connected with the economic growth of the country, whether it is for short term, medium term, or long term. However, our analysis have shown that over the years, say starting from the first economic reform of 91, and after that, the steel elasticity, that means demand growth of steel consumption with GDP, was pretty high. And so it was a very run-of-the-mill business that you can calculate on the back of the envelope what will be the steel consumption growth if the GDP grows at a certain rate. And over the years, what we have found, a truncated, say 10 years or 15 years data, if you see, this elasticity has secularly come down because of the various factors that were associated with it. Because of the most prominent factor I can tell is about the circular economy concept, that is, the reuse, remanufacture, and recycling of steel, so that no fresh production is needed and the old production is satisfying some of the major demand. So there are various other issues, and this is not the platform to discuss this. I will continue with the GDP growth. That economic survey has really reliably said that GDP growth is is going to be 6.5% in the current year, that is 22-23. And this is somewhat down from what RBI has projected earlier of 7%. So we go by economic surveys because that has been quoted in the budget also. And the GDP for next year has been projected to be around about between 6.1 and to 6.5. There is the IMF data that has come very recently, released very recently, also put forward that Indian economy, which will grow up 6.8% in 2022, will come down to 6.1% in 2023. So, and these are the various headwinds and in the global market that is being observed, starting from the war scenario, starting from the prices of the major commodities, etc., and various other possibilities. So there is a drop in 6.1%. However, we go by the budgetary recommendation, which they have said the nominal GDP would grow by 10.5%. So nominal GDP, if it grows by 10.5%, and if the inflation rate, you can take it as 4% only, then the GDP real growth will be 6.5%. So this is just an observation in order to set the tone right for assessing the implication of the budgetary recommendation on steel. First, I will go by the expenditure drivers, because we have been saying in the last year, I have attended a series of programs where people were coming out that, there is a definite slowdown in the private consumption, which is one of the major booster for steel demand, particularly for the consumer durables, for the two-wheelers, and for the rural demand. Yes, the rate of growth of private consumption has come down, and currently it occupies maximum share of GDP, about 60%, whereas in the government consumption is around 11%. So together, consumption factor contributing to GDP is about 70%, whereas the investment factor represented by the gross domestic capital formation is about 29%. And therefore, the major thrust or the major focus of this year's budget is to how to push up these gross domestic capital formation share 29% to say about 30% or 31%. We have been seeing the tremendous growth of steel industry in China, that their gross domestic capital formation has been hovering within the 45 to 48% of GDP for throughout the first 2 decades of this current century, 2021. Now, of course, it is now coming down, and there is a definite focus by the Chinese government to push up the consumption growth. And that is why the steel production, which has the figure just have come out, you will find there is a more than 2% deceleration in the production of crude steel in China. I'll come to that later on. So we'll have to see what is the budget impact on consumption and what is the budget impact on investment. So rate of growth of private consumption, I told you, has dropped to 9.2% in FY23 against a growth rate of 9.6% in government consumption. This is a very important area which I want to flag off, because in the FY21, which is just immediately after pandemic, if you find the statistics, you will recall there was a very big jump in the government consumption expenditure, which has totally supported the economic growth of the country. So we also want that once the government has enhanced the investment, it must enhance its consumption also. And consumption means, the normally CPWD works or the major residential complexes which the government makes, it comes under the government consumption, and so that must grow along with the investment. So however, consumption, I'll just leave it by saying that there is a marginal relief for IT, which Binay Shroff has mentioned for the lower income groups. And this the government expects to boost up FMCG, two-wheelers and consumer durable. There will be definitely a positive impact on the steel demand. However, I here put a note of caution. Of course, Mr. Jain has said that the inflation is definitely coming down, and Shroff has also said that it is almost 50% of 8.8%. But so far, there are so many imponderables about the pricing scenario. So the inflationary trend, I will just flag off, may necessitate further interest rate hike that can play a spoil sport for consumer demand. Personal loan, housing loan, etc. If the interest rate hike is there, then naturally there will be a fewer take care of these loans. As a result, this will impact the consumption growth of steel. The one very redeeming feature of the government hike in capex is that it has been, studies have shown that steel intensity in investment for infra is about 6 to 7 times more than consumption induced steel consumption. So please take this fact, if it is registered in our head, so you can immediately, collate or correlate the growth in GDCF with the growth in steel consumption. However, there is a constraining factor here. I'll come to that. This we have come to know, which is not, very healthy for Indian steel industry. So the capex detail, one is that 10.1 lakh crore is the capex, that is the budgetary support, plus private corporate investment. And the economic survey has said that the private corporate investment in H1 of last year, that is FY23, is nearly about 3.3 lakh crore. So this is a good scenario that private investment, the earlier statistics say that it was stagnant, nearly stagnant in the 20-21% of GDP, which is not there. Now it is coming up. And I agree with Binay Shroff that private investment will also make a boost and it will be crowd in, not crowd out, by more impact of the capex. This is also another sort of economic theory always tells us that when government invests, private sector goes away. It is not that. The scenario is that now private sector will also come because of the risk factor. They feel that the market is no longer very uncertain and the government is taking so many risks. And because of the PPP model, so many things are happening. So that will attract the private investment. So these two are the major plank of budgetary caps. One is the 10 lakh crores first, plus private corporate investment, and plus the budgetary revenue grants for capital creation. There is also an element which is there hidden in the revenue expenditure, which is grants for capital creation. So that also logically one should add into the capex. And plus, which all of you have mentioned, that 1.3 lakh crore to boost infrastructure out of the 50-year interest-free loans to the state. So the total kitty of capex is about 10 plus 10 plus 1.3 plus 3.3. It is about nearly about 25-26 lakh crores, which is really substantial. And I think it will take up the GDP to a much higher level. But to what extent this will benefit steel industry, I'll come to that. And so basically primarily the capex is earmarked for roads and highways, 2.6 lakh crore. Now railway, actually railway budgetary allocation, if you remember, only the other day railway had a separate budget, and now it is a part of the consolidated fund of the government of India. So naturally fund allocation to railway has become much more I think easy. And so this most of the, if you see the budget documents, most of these investment will be spent on new lines, gauge conversion, doubling of the lines, track renewal, rolling stock of wagon and coaches, for which a record amount of more than 37,000 crore has been allocated, and 152% jump over the last fiscal. However, and these wagons and coaches, you mean to say that these are either carbon steel, and now stainless steel has penetrated there. In fact, only the other day, some railway member was telling me that all coaches, they have decided they will go in for stainless steel coaches because of the environment friendly, and also this corrosive resistant thing is coming up pretty high for them. However, the cost will go up. Definitely the cost will go up, but to that extent, they may make some adjustment here and there. But both these items which I have just mentioned will add to tremendous amount of demand growth for the steel industry. Then defense, 1.7 lakh crore. Housing. Now I want to mention here one point. Somebody mentioned that PMAY, Prime Minister Awas Yojana, 79,590 crore against the last year allocation of 48,000 crore. So it is a very good jump with special focus on PMAY Grameen. However, if you see the norm of steel consumption in PMAY, it is only 4 kg per square feet. That is the steel use. They are not actually, when the PMAY houses are coming, very little quantity of steel is used. So that is a very traditional way of construction of houses, particularly in the rural areas as well as in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. Only in some urban areas, and I'm not talking of PMAY, I'm talking of some other complexes which are coming in the 7 cities, and the data has shown that more steel is being used. They are preferring more steel, more cold form structural steel framing houses. In Bangalore, their whole complex is coming in steel frame. And so these are the areas where, apparently there would be a tremendous amount of steel consumption. However, there are a lot of things to do from the steel industry side that they have to make available. There are something, I will come to that. Then there is a focus on urban infrastructure development fund for 10,000 crore for tier 2, tier 3 cities. It's a very good thing. It will create the decentralized demand growth for steel. Then, of course, we have got Jal Jeevan Mission, 70,000 crore, which is the clear drinking water through, steel pipes, because they have gone in for steel pipes. However, I am told in some of the states, they're still going in for the PVC pipes. So it requires, some sort of, campaigning on behalf of the steel industry, that in what way steel pipes will be much more, durable and much more corrosion free. Then rural development. Of course, there is a good thing that Honorable Finance Minister has announced a massive decentralized storage capacity for agricultural goods. Decentralized storage capacity, and these warehouses, steel is very ideally suited for long span structure like warehouses. The setting up of the Infrastructure Finance Secretariat, this would facilitate the investment in the infrastructure sector by private corporate houses. So very welcome step by the government. Of course, it is very difficult to quantify, but I am stating that this is a very, very facilitating factor in inviting private investment in the infrastructure sector. So, and the last one is that the government is reviewing the list of infrastructure sector. I think Firoj will support me in earlier days. We have been fighting for steel to be included in the infra sector, and the government finance ministry, they have not yet agreed. But this review means there is still a chance if steel can be included. So it will be a very good thing, very big jump for the steel sector to get a lot of duty exemption and other facilities. 75,000 crore that has been allocated for 100 critical infra projects. I will not highlight this because it has already been mentioned. Definitely it will be further facilitating to reduce the logistic cost to around 8 to 9% from the 14 to 15% logistic cost that Indian industry is facing. Selection of the 50 tourist destination with good quality infra support, Unity Mall in each state and prominent tourist center, and also for new airports, helipads. These are all, areas which I am sure, because civil aviation is one area where steel has made a lot of entry, whether it is tubular structure, whether it is hollow sections. But about the in the hotel and other, areas of, construction, I'm still doubtful whether steel can made such a headway. So lot of responsibility lies on the steel industry. So now I'm coming to that. What are the major challenges? First is there is steel-based structural design in all spans of road over bridges is still not available. Although INSDAG is doing, the first one span has been made by them, submitted to Ministry of Roadways, and they have accepted it. And now the EPC contractor has to accept it, so that the thousands of ROBs that are coming when a particular road of say about 100 kilometers span, particularly national highway, when it comes, there are so many ROBs. If all these ROBs can be steel based, then there will be a tremendous boost to steel consumption. However, for that, steel based structural designs must be available. And there is, of course, in the housing sector, I will still say, depending on my limited interaction with all the stakeholders in the real estate sector, I find there is a limited acceptability of steel structures for residential construction. So there also a lot of campaigning is needed. And inadequate domestic capacity to supply special steel. I think PLI scheme is doing a great job in inviting men producer to produce all those things. Green energy, I just said that Mukesh Kumar ji has already told. I will not say anything. Auto will be definitely a sector which is now surfacing a lot of growth, and of course there is a EV also is coming up, and the government is equally promoting the electric vehicle depending on the green energy commitment. And this is a very good step that the government has taken, that all the 9 lakh government vehicles, passenger car and CVs more than 15 years old will be scrapped. And so this will create more demand for CVs as well as EVs, as well as personal car and commercial vehicles, definitely. And a lot of scrap, because that is also another area which you must be aware that in the green energy, scrap-based steel technology is going to be more popular. So you need good quality scrap, indigenous scrap, because our indigenous generation has already been more or less been stagnant. So with this vehicle scrappage policy, I think the scenario is going to change for the betterment of steel industry. I'll now come back. There are 2 areas where this budget has very much highlighted. One is the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and this is very much there from the defense equipment sector, which for the last 2 years have been banning a lot of imports and incentivizing the domestic manufacturing capacity. Only thing is that domestic manufacturing capacity must be a part of the global value chain to become, so they can utilize their capacities. And with import duty on lithium ion cell for manufacturing of battery, which has been kept at 5%, but the specific capital goods or machinery for manufacturing of lithium ion cell for use in battery has been eliminated. So this shows that the government is very keen to indigenize the capacities, and capacity building exercise is a part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, and all of us will definitely support it. In order to support the industry, steel industry, the nil duty on ferrous waste and scrap, and the raw material for manufacturing CRGO, for instance, HRGO. I remember what was earlier days in Rourkela, what was the problem? The problem was that good quality HRGO was not available. So the raw material for manufacturing of CRGO, this duty exemption has been extended up to 31st March 2024. Now I'm coming to the last area, which is the skill development, where I am now associated. And you will find from the budget documents that the skill development program has been allocated a budget of 2,278 crore. There are 3 areas which the budget has already focused. One is that under Prime Minister Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, 3 lakh youths to be trained in the lakhs of youths to be trained in the next 3 years. So this program is going to be launched for the next 3 years. And we are already having the Prime Minister Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0 under recognition of prior learning program. That is the skilling and upskilling of the existing employees of these steel plants that we are doing in a massive scale. And that if that happens with the focus on Industry 4.0 that the budget documents has really mentioned, artificial intelligence, machine learning, IoT, 3D printing, robotics, drones. But I must say that other than large players, there is the penetration of Industry 4.0 in the SME sector is still very, very limited. So we'll have to have a lot of work to do in order to digitalization for the steel processes. And government has also targeting setting up 30 skill in that India international centers. In fact, I can tell you in welding, we have completed a training course for which 30 of our trained people have already been recruited at Malaysia and Singapore, and they will not come back. And the take-home salary is about starting from 1,60,000 to 2 lakhs of rupees. And so this is the kind of scenario that is we are forecasting. And the government, I am thankful to the government that they have said that the India will be a skilled manpower hub by setting this 30 Skill India International Center. And the last one is the NAPS, that is National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. And the government is targeting 47 lakh apprentices for the next 3 years. And there is a direct benefit to their account that will be going. So combining all this is my, I was just calculating the crude steel production now is having a 5% growth in April-December figure. So I am expecting that in FY22-23, we will be ending up with 128 million tons of crude steel, which will be about 6.4% growth over last year. The total steel import, which April-December, total steel, including semis, which was April to December this year is 5 million ton. Last year, it was 3.6 million ton. So there is a 40% growth. I am expecting that total steel import this year, we may like to end up 6.8 million ton, which will be a 42% growth over last year. Similarly, export, which April to December 22, total export has been of the order of 6 million ton, which is 58% lower compared to last year. And it is likely to be end up because now all the I would say the chains on the hands of the steel exporters have been removed, that 30% duty. So they are free to export, and the global steel market is also going up. Prices are moving up. So I will not be surprised if the steel industry, Indian steel industry ends up with 10 million tons of total export this year, which will be an 18%, which will be a 54% drop compared to last year. And with all this, the apparent consumption, steel consumption, which April-December is about 86 million ton, we may like to end up this, which is about 11.9% growth over last year. We may be ending up with 118 to 120. I think that is the scenario. I think Mr. Binay Shroff was also telling will be a 11% growth over last year. So this is in short what I want to place and for your benefit. Over to you, Nirmal.
Thank you, Sushimda. Whenever Sushimda speaks, my relationship with him goes back to last 25 years. So last 25 years, more than that I have known him. I have seen him that he is a master of data. He has every data. And initially, it was a part of Dr. Firoz's domain. Dr. Firoz used to perhaps provide the data to the industry at one point of time. But I am still very thankful to Sushimda that even after his superannuation from INSDAG, he has not left his job. He has kept himself briefed on what is happening on a day-to-day basis, including the production, consumption and availability data of steel in this country. If we look at 128 million tons, Mr. Anil Kumar Chaudhary, who is now the CEO of SR Mines and Metals Vertical, has projected at 138 million tons by next fiscal, which is 24. Which means we are likely to see enough growth in the next between 22-23 to 23-24. We are likely to see enough growth in the steel industry. But the unfortunate part is due to the imposition of export duty, our exports have come down drastically this fiscal. But I'm sure during the next fiscal, we'll make up for all that. And in true sense, Atmanirbhar Bharat will only emerge when we focus on Make in India campaign. So with that, Doctor, I'll put you on to Dr. Firoz, who was the chief economist of ERU, Economic Research Unit of JPC, and now a consultant for the steel industry. Followed by Ritubrata, who has also joined us. Mr. Ritubrata Ghosh is the vice president of ICRA, Indian Credit Rating Agency. And he's been there in our previous webinars as well, since his colleague, Mr. Jayanta Roy, could not join us today. Mr. Ritubrata Ghosh, vice president of Indian Credit Rating Agency, ICRA, will be addressing us right after Dr. Firoz. Now, Dr. Firoz, again, is one person who has not stopped after superannuation. I keep a track of him on Facebook and on social media, and I find him very active on social media, at times critical of certain issues, at times appreciative of certain issues, but I'm sure today we will have a balanced opinion on what this budget offers to the common man and to the steel industry all in one. So over to you, Dr. Firoz.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. It's a pleasure to be amongst all of you. And I know I'm a little outdated and perhaps, what should I say, irrelevant to the steel industry, because frankly speaking, I moved on to different areas, not just industrial areas, but I moved into different areas of research, which is not directly connected to the steel industry. I was very closely connected to the steel industry earlier, but at this moment, not. So it's as I could see from the beginning till now, it has been more of a discussion on the budget as such and the government's macro policy, rather than on the impact of the budget on the steel industry. The reason being very simple, that the budget hardly had anything to say on the steel industry directly. So that triggered crystal gazing for all of us. So what will happen to the steel industry if this happens, that happens? What will be the implication of this measure, that measure on the demand side of the story as far as the steel industry is concerned? That's what I could see. Now, when coming to the broader issues, I'll make some comments as such as Mr. Mukherjee has already said, that sometimes I'm very critical of things and sometimes I'm very supportive. And this time I must say that this budget has been generally very balanced exercise. In any budget, you have to have a balance between three aspects. One is growth, the other is distributive equity, and the third is stability. And I think in this is one of the budgets I have seen where a serious attempt has been made to have a balance of this three. And I must congratulate Honorable Finance Minister and my fellow classmate, Nirmala Sitharaman, for having brought out this interesting, having taken up the challenge and doing a very good job on it. And there are certain issues, of course. There is everywhere there is a cost to it, and there's a perception the government moves in a particular way, and not that everywhere you can produce something which pleases all. This doesn't happen. So it has to be at the cost of something, and there are costs to look at it before we talk about the benefits of it. Now, one of the things which I feel, which is a little worrisome, is that the budget doesn't really go along all the risk perceptions and challenges outlined in the economic survey. There's a mismatch between these two documents, you can say. The government policy as it has come out of government intents which have come out in the budget, and what has been shown up, projected as the major challenges in the coming days in the economic survey. There is a bit of the risk is more pronounced in the economic survey, whereas it seems to be less pronounced and talked about in the budget. Second issue is that I don't see much as far as the announcements are concerned on the trade aspects. In fact, we are seeing there is a stagnation in the trade in manufacturing over a period of time, and which has fallen and is stabilizing at a lower level. Trade is, I'm talking about both export and imports together and combined as a percentage of GDP. This is not a very good sign. I mean, I'm sure this is not something that the government intends to do, or this is not something that is part of government's agenda to reduce the share of global trade, or reduce the share of global trade in the GDP. But it has happened. I personally feel, from the point of view of employment creation and from the point of view of bringing in stability into the system, global trade is very important. And global trade can flourish only when there is a corresponding stable environment. The ecosystem has to be there for the global trade to flourish. And for that, two things are required. One is finance, trade finance. The other is competitiveness of the industry. So you have to be able to produce something for the world. And for that, whatever is required for the domestic economy in the form of imports, that has to come at low cost. So if the cost of trade are high, the cost will fall, the trade will fall. That will reduce employment, that will have a big impact on the income flows income flows across the economy. So I think there has been a lack of attention to that. Then I have, of course, somehow another concern. I mean, one of the speakers has talked about, or most of us at this moment are aware of the fact that we are past the peak as far as inflation is concerned. Yes, globally, inflation rate has come down. India inflation rate has come down. But to me, inflation is not something that has gone away, and it has gone for a freak out session somewhere, and it'll come back again because of the very nature of the global business at this moment. Today, because India's inflation has been somewhat lower because we are being able to buy crude at a low price from Russia. And prices, because of this, global oil prices, because of recession, is low. So we are managing a lot of inflation and current account deficits. We are managing quite well. But that is not going to be the days in the things to see in the future. So inflationally, what we do at this moment to maintain a stable policy to check on inflation, that has to be seen. And I'm not at all supportive of the fact that monetary instruments can actually work to curb inflation globally. US can do it. US depends on monetary policy. They are very much what I call Milton Friedmanites. And this monetary policy, which US follows for a very large financial economy, that's different from they have a different kind of system, obviously, which takes care of a lot of pitfalls, which we are not, we cannot really handle it, frankly speaking. And we have statistically also seen that increase in interest rate, the policy rates have had little no impact on the inflation part of it, in reduction of inflation or anything. So it is, inflation has gone up or gone down based on many different factors, and mostly supply side factors which has happened, I mean, which they keep on changing. Sometimes it's expensive, sometimes less. Commodity prices, commodity cycles, they are sometimes high, sometimes low. So all this put together, they have created an inflationary environment which are divorced from the monetary policy. So I personally don't think that this particular aspect should be left to Reserve Bank of India and should be incorporated in the government's fiscal policy. That is something that you do in a budget. So see that the government actually takes serious steps, fiscal steps, to see the inflation is curbed. I don't see any major policy action towards this. Now, I have another critical point, I mean, which came up, I mean, 2 or 3 speakers before me all praised about the government's vehicle scrapping policy, which will help the steel industry. Now, based on a consulting assignment, which we have done, a very detailed study, high-value study, we found that vehicles scrapping policy neither helped the automotive industry, nor did it help the steel industry. And I give you some simple example. Let me see if a person has to scrap a car. At this moment, before it is scrapped, he has the option of taking it out to a different place to sell it at a low price. Ultimately, disposes of a car at a different locations. There are number of agencies which are dealing with it. So the car is not finally scrapped. The person who is selling it, he has sold a car at a lower price, and we have found in most cases that they have bought a second-hand car. So there is no new car so long it's not bought. So the auto industry also doesn't gain out of it. So long it's not scrapped, steel industry doesn't get anything out of it. So what has happened is that the cars move from one state to another, and ultimately they don't get anything. And even if it does help in a longer run, I think it will be marginal, and it will be great capital loss. I mean, ultimately asset loss to the population whose incomes will be lower, their savings will be lowered, and that will impact the availability of investment capital at the end of the day. So this is something that is based on a detailed study. Now, another point I want to make is about hydrogen. Now, everybody is talking about hydrogen economy, and steel industry and hydrogen. As Dr. Mukesh Kumar has already pointed out, that there is no large-scale technology available at this moment, and really acceptable technology available at the moment, which can be deployed at a commercial scale to meet the requirement of large plants. So hydrogen story perhaps will carry on till 2040 or something like that, and we will have a long way to go, and we'll live with it, with blast furnaces and carbon-based iron steel reduction. So what is from the point of view that if hydrogen production ultimately will require renewable energy will be more available and less costly in the western areas, and the steel plants currently competitive locations are in the east or down south. Now, transportation of hydrogen is not a very easy thing, and it's expensive also. So, how will the plants in the eastern India or mid central India gain out of it? And will new plants come up and be set up in Maharashtra, Gujarat area, or Rajasthan, or something like that, where they will hold iron ore for all the way? No, I think it will be very disruptive. So it will take a long time for this kind of an economic model to be brought up to actually put in place a hydrogen economy for the steel industry. Forget about the rest of the places. Similarly, one has to go a long way for go some way for hydrogen vehicles. Yes, that is something easier, but still, 2030, 2040, whatever it is, 2035, there may be all electric vehicles talked about, but there are huge constraints around raw materials, batteries, lithium, nickel, and cadmium, and all that, whatever is used. There's not that plenty available in plentiful, and so many other technologies. So it's going to be a very expensive transition to a hydrogen economy or net zero economy, if you think at the end of the day. So we have allocated some funds, 35,000 crores or something for a transition, energy transition, and we have already got a hydrogen mission, which is to invest some around 8 lakh crores, out of which we have 19,700 crore or something has been allocated from this year's budget, which is a big sum, but it's a long way to go till 2030. Just imagine 8 lakh crores. That is the sum of money. Last point, I am always, because to counter some of the common perception about investment in the of the government, how in quantitative term there is a big shift in certain areas, but it's structurally the expenditure of the government has nature of expenditure, nature of revenue earning has remained more or less constant. If you look at the budget, there is something called where the rupee comes from, where the rupee goes to, something a chart, pie chart appears in the budget document, which you will see here. In the pie chart, what does it say? Rupee goes to interest payment, 20%. It's very high. And that has increased from 18% in 2019-20. This is something. And central sector schemes, yes, it has gone up from 13% to 17%. So there is an improvement of government, increased government investment in intervention in the economic matters. So it has increased from there. Defense has gone down from 9% to 8%. Subsidies, 8% to 7%, gone down. Centrally sponsored scheme, same 9%. Pensions, 5% to 4%. Other expenditure, 8%, 8%, same thing. And state share in taxes and duties that's gone down is from 23% to 18%. Now, what my worry is, it's not just the how interest is, how this is, how the expenditure goes. And if you look at it, where the rupee comes from, borrowings and other liabilities, it has gone up from 20% to 34%. So the government is talking about a debt-driven economy, debt-driven management of the government. So 20 to 34% is a big money, and debt-led growth has always elements of big risk, because if you fail, if you falter, then your debt, the interest liabilities, interest will go up, and that may eat up your finances. The government will have to borrow a lot more money, increasingly more money to fund itself, and managing fiscal deficit, which is being planned to be brought down to 4.5% by 2025-26, maybe a bit more challenging than what it is, unless this debt driven investments are very productive. So we don't really have a great record of very productive investment, debt-driven productive investment. I'm sure if from the point of view of corporate business, it's a good idea to have lots of money under one's belt and then spend as much as one likes. And so long nobody questions is good. But from the point of view or national point of view, it's a different story. We cannot possibly afford a very strong inflation emanating from government policy, not just external policies. External policy situations, environment may be quite different. We had faced this. But if it is in addition, if it is also driven by government's own policy, then inflation will be more difficult, will be bigger, and inflation is the root cause. I mean, it is something that kills growth. So we have to be very careful in this respect. I think I have spoken a lot. I think I should end here. But I'm a little worried, as I said, that effective capital investment, again, expenditure of the government, if you look at it, data, FY23, somehow the budget was 10.7 lakh crores, FY23 in BE budget estimate. And revised estimate, it has fallen to 10.5. It has not increased. This is as part of the budget document. And what? Look at revenue expenditure of the government. So budget estimate of FY23 was 31.9 lakh crores, gone up to 34.6 lakh crores. So in the budget, if you're forced to spend more on your expenditure is more on the revenue account, then that's not a very good sign for investment climate. So these are some of the worries, concerns that we have. And again, we end it with a thanks to Steel and Metallurgy and for remembering me all of a sudden. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Firoz. Once again, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. And those of you who are not aware, let me tell you, the NSP 2017, the National Steel Policy, when the draft was formulated, it was a major contribution from Dr. Firoz. If I'm right, Dr. Firoz, you contributed the maximum towards draft of the National Steel Policy. Am I right?
Yeah, we did.
You don't have to be too humble to accept that. You worked very closely to prepare the National Steel Policy. And in spite of working so closely with the government, you have been always critical of issues which were not too, though they always say two economists never agree. But as an economist, you have always been critical of the steps which you thought was not in the right direction. And you still keep maintaining that. And since I keep following you even today, I know you are not too happy with everything and you always speak your mind. And today I think you did a very fair analysis of the pros and cons, especially with regard to fiscal prudence. I think that part you highlighted very well. What does not match the fiscal prudence is not good for our economy. Well, keeping all that in mind, I'm sure our keynote speaker for today, Mr. V.R. Sharma, who has just joined us. A warm namaskar to you, Sharma Sahab. And I always keep saying what Mr. Sharma predicts today becomes true tomorrow. So once again, it is turn of Mr. V.R. Sharma, Vice Chairman of JSPL Advisory Services, and ex-Managing Director of JSPL, to take us through what this budget has in store for us and what he predicts for the medium and long-term benefits this budget could provide to the steel industry. Over to you, Sharma Sahab, our keynote speaker. Followed by Mr. Sharma will be Mr. Ritoproto Ghosh, Vice President of Indian Credit Rating Agency, and how Indian Credit Rating Agency ICRA looks at the budget will be what Ritoproto will be highlighting after Mr. Sharma. Over to you, Sharma Sahab. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nirmala. Thank you and good evening. Good evening, Dr. Firoz. It was very informative. You explained each and everything very in detail. And our previous speakers, they also highlighted many things. So I could get the glimpse of the data and figures shown and declared by them. So first of all, I would like to congratulate Mr. Nirmala for having organized this particular debate or discussion or panel discussion as to what this budget is giving to us and how it is good or bad for the steel industry. So there are two aspects of it. Dr. Firoz, you have already explained. I will not go for the numbers, and I will not, because most of the numbers are already munched by people in last 3 days. So first of all, the intention of the government. So the government intentions I'm taking in couple of major points. Number one, ease of doing business. So government is trying that the new entrepreneurs, they should come and the business should flourish. This is a good step. Point number two, the clearances, more than 3,000 clearances or the impediments are removed by Government of India. And this is a welcome step. So now, of course, the steel industry or the heavy metal industry, mining industry will not get the single window clearance or the single table clearance, but there will be some relief because the environment policies, forest clearance, the environment pollution department clearance, I mean, those all clearances are still required, and these will continue also for a heavy industry. But I think government intention is to make a smooth inflow of capital through MSMEs or through little upper middle organizations, those who can put up their shops, put up their plants in India, and for them it should be a true ease of doing business in the country. Then the next is, I'm also thankful to our government. The government has not increased the corporate tax. It is still at 25%. That's very good. There are some relief given to the salaried class people, which was overdue. And I'm thankful to government that the government has understood the hard time faced by the salaried people, those who are in a bracket of up to 10, 12 lakhs per annum. So now they will be in a position to save some money. For the HNIs also, government has given a benefit about 2 to 3% from the highest tax of 42% to 39%. It's okay, some relief to them also, but still I would say it is very high. The individual taxation at 39% that is existing now, whereas the corporate tax is 25%. So any HNI or any person who is a professional or consultant or a law consultant or technical consultant or anybody or people, those who are working, so they are paying, if they are above the bracket of 1 crore, then they pay 39% and the corporate will pay 25%. So I think maybe in future, this gap will be bridged by government slowly, gradually. Another good thing is that now we are having more number of taxpayers in the country, and we should reach to a level of about 7 to 8% in times to come. If this comes 7 to 8%, that means the country is improving and the salaries or the overall income is increasing, and that's why people are in the tax bracket of the system, and that should go up to 7 to 8%, and the best will be 10% in a country like ours, because still we have more than 50% people, those who are dependent on government aids, government food, or Manrega, or the free food policy. That means they are away from the tax bracket, and it will be difficult for all of us or for government to increase their revenues or income to a level that they start paying the taxes. So out of 140 crore people, let us say the family of 4, they have, after every 4 person, there is one earner. So that means 35 crore. out of 35 crore, if you say that 3 crore people are paying tax, then it is 10% today. And if tomorrow the taxpayers become 10 crore, then it will be 33%. So we should see this particular data or number as per the paying capacity. As far as the industry is concerned, government had been neutral for steel industry and also for mining. So we are expecting that the capex will continue, and there'll be no threat or impediments from bank sides to the steel industry. I'm sure Government of India must have given clear guidelines to the banks or to the financial institutions to support the capex. If they support the capex, then it is going to be, a journey where we'll be producing 250, 280, or maybe 300 million tons. But we need capex. The another major issue is now green steel. So the green steel, if we produce green steel through own green energy and green hydrogen, then the cost is coming to roughly about $3 billion per million ton of steel. Whereas a greenfield project with the blast furnace, the cost comes to about $1 billion or maybe $0.9 billion per ton of steel. So it is quite evident that 3 times of the cost one has to spend to produce a million ton of steel. So this is going to be very difficult unless some fiscal benefits within the country or the carbon trading within the country to that level that does not come, and people don't get their payback time within 3 to 4 years time. So otherwise it will be very difficult. So what we are suggesting to government, that there should be 3 agencies in future. Number one, the steel mill, of course. The steel mill will have to make themselves enable to use hydrogen as a fuel, as a reductant through DRI route. This is one party. And the next is there should be somebody in between who can supply the green hydrogen over the fence, OTF. And there should be the third agency who should produce green energy or green electricity. And for that, our recommendation and suggestion is that a company like NTPC, they should take it over. NTPC is a power generator and power supply to the entire nation. So Government of India, in my view, we recommend that they should encourage NTPC to put up more and more nuclear power plant, more and more solar plants, more and more windmills, and maybe more and more hydroelectric plant. So it is a large institution and they have good experience. They're very good engineers. They can do it better than anybody else. Then they have a full support of Grid Corporation of India. They can produce green energy and they can supply this green energy to anybody in the country, anywhere, who will convert this green energy into green hydrogen. And this green hydrogen plant should be next door or maybe in the vicinity of steel mills, so that the risk of transporting hydrogen through pipelines, that is made negligible or mitigated fully. So because this is very risky gas, and hydrogen, once it is being transported in a country like India, where it's very difficult to control villagers or excavators or miners or even the household builders or agriculturists or anyone to not to puncture the hydrogen gas or hydrogen pipeline accidentally, unknowingly. So it is always better to have the hydrogen plants next door to steel mills, and a very small pipeline, 2-3 kilometers, 4 kilometers, which will be cordoned and which will be secured, fully secured through security guards or something. So this is required. So in nutshell, the mission hydrogen can only be successful when these 2 agencies, one is green energy generator and the other is green hydrogen generator, they start supplying green hydrogen to steel mills and also the green electricity to steel mills. So this is one area which I would like to recommend to government. And once we reach to that level, that means we have completed the journey about 70 to 80%. Then the next is till that time, what should we do? So till that time, I would like to reiterate that coal bed methane or coal gasification, that is syngas, synthesis gas, is the only answer today in the country to reduce iron ore or iron ore pellets through the gasification route. Sorry. So this this particular the technology or this particular route is quite successful, and we should all try to obtain this practice. Often, the smaller players, they had been complaining that the small gasification plants and small DRI plants are not available in the world. So last week, I had a detailed discussion with HYL, Danily, Tenova, this consortium, and they say that we can supply 200,000 tons per year of DRI plant based on coal gasification. So this is a good sign, and I think this will definitely help India, and this will help the Indian industrialists to produce steel, not green steel, I would say gray steel, and they can produce through coal gasification. The other area which is most important today is how to capture the CO2 and how to utilize this CO2. We have seen that thousands of tons of CO2 can be captured every day, but the outlets to or the buyers to buy CO2, those are not available. So we suggest Government of India to create those CO2 consumers hub in the vicinity of steel mills so that they can start selling their CO2 either at a price or free of cost. So these are the areas. Now, as far as the budget is concerned, in a nutshell, I would say budget is positive. There is nothing negative in the budget, and this is the budget for the whole world aspirations. We believe that more and more investments will keep coming in the country. We also believe that the world investors will continue showering their interest or continue showering their investments in Indian Stock Exchange, and more and more multinational companies will come in the country, and a positive vibe has been sent by Government of India, and this is a good sign. When we see our country and we compare it with the many countries in the world, and especially in the SAARC countries, like India, comparing with Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or Nepal or Bhutan or Afghanistan, you will find that except India, everybody is passing through a very, very hard time, very difficult time. So I would say India is still better, and this will remain better, hopefully, and we can drive the economy to a level so that we are crossing, say, about $5 trillion very soon, and then finally we should be a third largest economy, and we should work how to become the second largest economy in next 10 to 15 years time, and which is quite possible. We have already surpassed China in population. This may be a good sign or bad sign. 1.42 billion people. But the issue here is, the biggest issue here is that how to manage this manpower. Now, as of now, the biggest challenge is that we are not getting the experienced technicians and engineers for the steel industry. Government will have to do something in the skill upliftment of the people, so that we start getting more and more engineers, technicians, diploma holders, ITI persons, and they are lured by steel industry, and they should willingly and voluntarily should come to the steel mills. If this happens, then we'll address the issue of manpower for next 8 to 10 years time. So so far so good. Everything is good. Conclusion is the budget is good, very positive looking, and there are no negative in this particular budget. Some people say it is a political budget, but budget is a budget. It is neither a political or economical. Budget is a budget. So government is trying their best so that the industry, a proper balance is drawn in between industry and the government policies. Let us hope things will move in a much better direction. There had been some problems in the stock market, as you all know, because of a particular business house. I'm sure this will also, the problems will recede away very soon, and the country will remain normal in times to come. So thank you very much. Thank you, Nirmala, and thank you for listening me. Good evening.
Thank you, Sharma. Thank you once again. Once again, you gave a very critical analysis of the way forward and the fact that the government, you called it a neutral budget, quote unquote, neutral as far as steel industry is concerned, which if I read between the lines, also means that there was scope for more allocation to benefit the steel industry. So we always, and as Dr. Firoz said, there were a lot of places where perhaps a little more would have made the difference. And Sharma Saab, once again, it's good that you spoke about the reality of the hydrogen economy. It is, I think today a lot of speakers spoke about, Shushinda also mentioned, I think Dr. Mukesh Kumar also mentioned that hydrogen economy is a distant reality as of today. And your focus on coal gasification seems to be the order of the day. Judicious use of our available resources are more important than dreaming, about something which we can not implement at this stage due to primarily economic and safety factors. Safety factor was also very well highlighted by Mr. V.S. Sharma. Now, Rito Broto and Dr. Firoz, do you have any questions for Mr. Sharma? Dr. Firoz?
No.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, Rito Broto, please go ahead.
Yeah, so JSP has been a pioneer in the coal gasification using in the steel industry. But in terms of the adoption, I mean, we have seen that, the adoption has been pretty slow. I mean, if outside of JSPL. So what are the various challenges, people are experiencing while adopting coal gasification, the gray way of steel making?
Yeah, you're right. The adoption is very slow as far as the steel industry is concerned. But fertilizer industry and Coal India, methanol, ethanol, these are the areas where the adoption is quite fast. The another point is because most of the steel mills, they are on blast furnace route and they don't have the electric arc furnaces. So when they don't have the electric arc furnaces, they don't need the DRI. So that is another problem. So unless they put up the electric arc furnaces, then only they will feel the necessity of having DRI. Now, Tata Steel is working on this to start a DRI plant or to order a DRI plant. They are working. And finally, maybe one day they will switch over to coal gasification or hydrogen, direct hydrogen. The another area is because not many steel mills are having the coal mines. So still we have to go through a auction process, and once the auction takes place, then it is very, very highly unpredictable whether the particular mines we will get or not. And coal gasification is a process where you need a consistency in coal quality. So that is another second impediment. I think I suggest Government of India that we should invite the private participation from companies worldwide who can come and can put up a syngas or coal gas manufacturing plant on commercial basis, and they should supply the syngas over the fence, like hydrogen gas I was talking, to the steel industry. So that is a business which is at the offing. If this happens, then there'll be a number of plants in the country. They'll convert coal into gas and they'll supply syngas to steel mills. So these are a few of my thoughts that how can we encourage coal gasification in the country. Prime Minister has spoken a couple of times that the coal is to be used in a most environmental friendly manner, and today that is only through coal gasification. So I think government's view and government's intention is there to encourage the usage of coal gasification, but most of the mills, as I told you, they are blast furnace based, and they are unable to take a decision as to when to put up the DRI plant. So that's the reason that steel mills are not putting the coal gasification units. This might be.
I have a question.
I wanted to add one more thing. What Sarmaji has told, all the points where he has told very critical. This thing. Another issue which we are facing today, because most of our coal was having high ash, and what Sarmaji has told, we want a consistency in the coal quality. So normally whatever technologies are available, those are available normally for a coal up to 30% ash. So we have not identified, our government of India, the coal reserves which are having low ash, maybe around 32% or 35%, which can be beneficiated to around 30%, so that those can be used in this thing. Today, now government has made a policy that we want to create 100 million ton coal gasification facilities in the country by 2030. And I think under that plan, they may come out with such type of policy decisions where low ash coal can be earmarked for gasification, and that will give a boost to coal gasification industry. But what Sarmaji has told, coal gasification is one of the best route for iron and steel industry to minimize our dependency on imported coal, and as well as to become Atmanirbhar in our iron and steel making. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Thank you. I have a question for Vinayji. Vinayji, JSW is perhaps one of the first players which actually thought of entering the electrical steel market. But even today, if you look at the strategy of the major, 5-6 players that we have in this country, no one has really, when you talk about, let's say between CRNO and CRGO, especially with regard to CRGO, not much initiative has been taken. Though we have, at least some demand for CRGO in this country. Why is that we have not been able to take that up, or no one has taken that initiative?
No, thank you, Nirmalya. That's a very good question. See, there are two aspects to it. One is with the type of capital and the available capital for each of the industry, for each of the companies, and I'm sure, where is the opportunity which is there? And looking at the growth which is expected in the country, what we just talked about in the last 2 hours, we are really looking at major growth happening in the infrastructure segment. And so with the limited capital available, are we really looking at catering to the domestic demand and making sure that there is an opportunity which India as a country is offering, and therefore all of us can encash that? Or we are looking at something which has yet to evolve in future and try to make sure that we are ready for it. Not that we don't want to be, but it's just a question of prioritizing. That is one. That's the first one way to look at it. The second, the type of technology which is available, right? And obviously you will be looking at trying to tie up with somebody who's got this technology. Today, the capital required for setting up a CRGO is much, much higher than a normal per million ton of steel. Now, with this type of a situation we are in as a country today, so therefore it's a question of a priority. We try to allocate the capital in a manner where you will be able to generate the stakeholders' return, and simultaneously look for an opportunity at an appropriate time where you will be able to invest in geo when the market is going to support it, and when the technology will be available at a much reasonable cost, if I can say. So I think that is the I will say the dilemma, or that is the choice the industry has. Having said that, I think as a company with our collaborators, JFE, we are very aggressively looking at getting into geo in the near future, very, very aggressively. And I think in one of the addresses, our chairman had also mentioned that. So that is always an open option to us, and we are looking at that and pursuing it. But to be able to give a, to get into it right now, I think these are the things which are going on in the mind and how to really address it.
Thank you, Mr. Shroff. Thank you, Vinayji. One of the things which I, in one of my earlier discussions with the then CMD of RINL, when they were planning to move in for a seamless tube mill, one of the major reasons why they backed out at that stage was primarily the kind of investment which was required at that stage. So someone in this country has obviously, and it could be no one else who understands it better than Sajanji himself, because Sajanji was, if you look at his track record, he has been the first to enter the areas which were not uncharted by everyone else, whether you call it the first Forex plant in this country. And in fact, it's not that everything has been smooth sailing for him as well. Forex went into problems, but in spite of that, he went in for the second module, and he was largely successful after that. So, the job of every industrialist in this country is to move into uncharted territories so that we could give the country the best. Dr. Firoz, would you like to add to that? Or Mr. Sumendra Jain, would you like to ask anything to Mr. Sharma? Mr. Jain, are you there? Dr. Firoz, you are muted.
Yeah. So one of the issues that we are working on at this moment relates to steel industry. I mean, in the context of hydrogen and decarbonization, that the kind of new impositions that one will have on the steel industry in India or elsewhere, there's a potential, of course, that is technology shift, technology transition is a big, huge cost. That also is associated with potential relocation, because new locations can be found with the new technology space, the new technology systems, whether it's a hydrogen, gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, I mean green hydrogen, a different matter, but blue hydrogen and say gray hydrogen can be a very comfortable situations when it comes to say Middle East. Now, it might be possible that these Middle Eastern countries may just lap up this opportunity using that. I mean, not really bothering about green hydrogen, but they would go all out with blue hydrogen and gray hydrogen, and then ultimately take lead in steel. If we vacate the space, whether we should vacate this space of coking coal-based hydrogen steel production and production. If we don't vacate it, it may be still difficult for them to come up. But if we insist ourselves that we should go for abandon this coal-based steel production and go for greener steel, then it might be ending up losing a lot of the industry, because JSPL, I can understand they have taken a lead already in coal gasification, but it's not possible for everybody. Everybody cannot just put up a coal gasification plant. I think given the geographies, given the situation, I mean, raw materials availability. So JSPL may be one leg up, but still, I mean, for the industry to reach 500 million tons of steel, if you are talking about, then it's a a problem of completely different dimension. It's just not problem of a 4 million ton plant or a 5 million ton plant specific plant, I mean, for which technological transformation is taking place. So overall, it can become very, very challenging, and in that challenge, we may just lose out. Strategically, we should think about this kind of disruptions, potential disruptions.
Thank you, Dr. Firoz. Thanks for your inputs with regard to the challenges that we have in implementing, let's say, coal gasification plants, and especially coal gasifier suppliers are also, I would say, you can count them. There are not too many in this country who are capable enough to deliver coal gasifiers to the level of the demand which could be created in future. Well, with that, I'll move on to our last analyst and the most important speaker of the day, the analyst view of this year's budget, Mr. Ritoproto Ghosh, Vice President of Indian Credit Rating Agency, ICRA. So, Ritoproto has addressed our earlier webinars as well, so I'm sure he's going to do justice to the subject, and he has spent a good number of years in the metal segment. So I'm sure he will educate us more on what's coming for our industry during this fiscal year, the coming fiscal year. Over to you, Ritoproto.
Thank you. Very good evening to the participants and my fellow panelists. And thanks for inviting me to express ICRA's opinion on the union budget. I'll keep my comments very short, touching upon the broad themes, because I think we have discussed in detail. Mr. Banerjee has touched upon the numbers in detail. So before I start, just some interesting data points I just wanted to share. This is the third time, which is a hat trick, wherein we have seen that the government's capex spending has grown by over 30%. So this is a hat trick of sorts. The second data point, which is that if you look at the government's annual capex spending, which has been envisaged in the national infrastructure pipeline, it's around 7.5 lakh crore per annum. So we achieved, fell just short of it in financial year 23. We were about 7.2 lakh crore. And this year, the target that has been given, which is around 10 lakh crore, we will exceed the hurdle rate that was there in the national infrastructure pipeline. And the NIP, the financial year 25 is going to be the last year of the NIP. And if the government has to meet the NIP targets, its own share, which is around 40% of the overall pool, then in the next financial year, the government will need to spend around 12.5 lakh crore, which, judging by the trajectory of around 30% or plus that we have seen over the last 3 years, it looks very much likely. So overall, the broad message that we have seen in the budget is that, capex spending has been given a significant amount of impetus, given the limited resources with the government. It was felt that, capex has an important effect on GDP multiplier, and to that extent, large part of the resources have been mobilized in this area. So 30% growth in capex we have seen in financial year 24. And as of now, I mean, this is something which was a bit higher. In fact, we were looking at around 8.5 to 9 lakh crore kind of a number. But 10 lakh crore is something which is much better than what most analysts were penciling in for the next financial year. The other thing, other side of capex is regarding the private side, because at the end of the day, the government's attempt, government cannot maintain this level of run rate perennially, because obviously there are other pressing needs of the government, because we have seen that some of the other sectors like subsidies have, the allocations have been lower. Some of the other social schemes, obviously there has been either similar or lower level of allocations. So at some point in time, the allocations could shift, but the big bet it appears that the government is playing is that the government's capex spend will crowd in private investment, because while the message on the government capex side has been very, very positive, on the private side, if you look at it, the target in the NIP is around 4 lakh crore per annum. We are not even halfway around that mark. We were just about doing 2 lakh crore kind of a number every year. So obviously, there's a lot of catch up to do, but some sectors have seen some amount of positive signals, be the renewable energy, metals, automobile, chemicals, oil and gas. But generally, the private sector capex has been generally much more muted. But hopefully, sometime, if not in 24, in 25, we will possibly see the private sector capex come to the 4 lakh crore, which is budgeted in the NIP. So that's the broad, that the number part of it. Now, if we come to the individual schemes, I would like to look at the various announcements from 3 broad lenses. The first lens is the lens of urbanization. If you look at India's, the major tectonic shift that is happening in the world today, which is in the 20th century, it was the mass migration in China from rural to urban India. In the 21st century, it is happening in India. So what is happening is that it is putting a lot of pressure on our cities. And to that extent, the government has realized that to ease the pressure on our tier 1 cities, there's very important that we develop the infrastructure in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities so that they become attractive propositions for people migrating from rural areas to urban areas. And to that extent, you will see that in that lens, that some of the metro projects which are being announced, for which funds have been allocated, are in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Cities like Patna, Surat, cities like Nagpur, Agra. So a lot of investment is happening so that urban mobility in tier 2 cities gets the due recognition, and to that extent, the infrastructure in tier 2 cities improve, and to an extent, from tier 1 cities, the pressure gets reduced. The other interesting bit which has been announced new, I think Mr. Banerjee touched upon that, which is the fact that the government has developed a new urban infrastructure development fund, and to start with, they've allocated around 10,000 odd crores, which is also a welcome move. And to add to that, there's a lot of focus on the ability of municipal bodies to raise capital. And for a long time, municipal financing, in India has not taken shape. But obviously, if India has to live up to this mass migration that is happening, obviously, these bodies at some point in time should be able to raise capital on their own and provide the infrastructure that is needed for the people that they are serving. So that's something which is the first message that I picked up from the budget. The second message, which is not new, but it has been happening for the last several years, is a quantity to quality shift in an infrastructure. So just to give you some interesting statistics, India has the second largest road network in the world. Just after USA, our road network is just shy of USA, though as a country, we are possibly much smaller than USA, but only 2% of our road network are national highways. So obviously this number was much lower, let's say a decade back. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And to that extent, we are seeing that in the area of transportation, huge amount of capital has been deployed, and that is something which has continued for the last, at least last 5 years. And so to that extent, the quality of our road infrastructure is improving. And we have achieved around 40 kilometers per day, but I think the target that Mr. Gadkari has set itself for the next financial year is around 45 kilometers. And obviously, with every, as a milestones get achieved, and getting incremental improvements become increasingly difficult, I think. So to that extent, obviously in highways, a lot of investment has been happening, and the transit time between 2 points, is reducing with every day. But that said, if you look at the average travel time between cities, or the average speed of road transport in India, it is one of the lowest among the top 7 steel producing countries. So to that extent, a significant amount of catch up that needs to be done. The second is in the area of railways. So in railways also, we are seeing the same trend about the quantity to quality shift in infrastructure. So we are looking at a lot of investments in increasing the speed at which the trains move. So a lot of dedicated freight corridor is one such initiative. Similarly, the bullet trains are there. Also, we are looking at the Gatiman Express, and also the quality of the infrastructure in railways also has found a focus, because significant amount of investment is happening in the area of station redevelopment. So that's one broad bucket wherein we are seeing that in railways this year, there's significant amount of capital, almost 2.6 lakh crore to a capex investment is to go to railways. Now, one very interesting data, I think, which was not highlighted very much by the media, which is that for the steel industry, I think availability of rakes has been a very real problem. It's more so since the energy crisis has broken out over the last 1 year or so, and rake availability is a very big challenge. But this year, the government has not disappointed, because if you look at the allocation towards rolling stock, it has increased by 150%, which is a very, very welcome move. And hopefully, I mean, as and when these orders get executed and delivered, this pressing problem of rake availability shortage or rake shortage or this can be addressed to a large extent. So that's about the quality to, I mean, the quantity to quality. So the third broad prism, which was very much in focus in the budget, which is the green transition. Mr. Sharma, Dr. Firoz, Mr. Banerjee all highlighted about that. But I think for the steel sector, there's significant amount of opportunity that needs to be, that comes in. If I talk about auto, I think, I mean, significant amount of impetus was given to electric mobility. And with electric mobility, you understand that it requires a different kind of steel. Lightweighting is something which is a buzzword in developed markets. So advanced high strength steel. So those are things which will obviously create a significant amount of disruption, but it will also create new opportunities for steel players. So whoever is able to take the technology, I mean, take the technological initiative, be the first mover, I mean, there's a chance to, benefit from this transition. The other important transition, message, which is that this time the government, kind of put impetus on the other activities which are corollary to this transition to green energy, which is the balancing power. Because till now there's a lot of focus on solar, wind, but obviously not much of effort or focus was given to the balancing power. But this time, I think in the budget transcript, pumped storage project found important message, and these are large investments. I mean, in India there are very few operational large pumped storage projects, but at a single site, that can lead to investment of a few thousand crores. So, I mean, if multiple sites get developed across India, it creates a lot of potential for commodity players, be it cement or steel. So that's something which is very, very promising. The other interesting theme which came out was that, we have been talking, I mean, the country has been going through this renewable transition in the western part of India. Solar parks have been developed because of the better insulation. But I would like to tell here that in India, the highest insulation is in Ladakh. I mean, that gets the best, it is the highest, some of the best solar radiation in the world. But unfortunately, because it is in a very remote place, I mean, you cannot standalone develop because the transmission connectivity is still not there. But this time, the government has addressed that, and that critical 13 gigawatt transmission corridor has found a place in the budget. Obviously, this is a huge investment that will kind of is required. But to start with, I think around 20,000 crore has been allocated, and so that's something which is broadly positive. But I think in this green transition, this is just a starting one, because with every budget, the sense that we're getting is that more and more part of the budget, a lot of these newer initiatives towards the green energy will find a place, and obviously it will create new opportunities for steel players. Now, I would like to end my conversation with, I think, a very important point Dr. Firoz had raised regarding the debt sustainability of the budget. I think fiscal deficit around 6.4% next year. I think it is expected to come down to around 5.9. So here, I think one thing that when Dr. Firoz talked about the sustainability of the debt, I think one very interesting milestone this year, possibly in the next financial year, which is that in the next year, our ICRA GDP forecast for 24 is around 6%, 6% kind of a growth. And currently the government is borrowing at around 7%. And generally, whenever, I think I bring here the work of Dr. Olivier Blanchard, wherein he mentioned that as long as the country's GDP growth is higher than the cost of debt, the issues of debt sustainability doesn't come in. For us, India, generally it has been that case. This year, obviously, we are at a 7% kind of a growth, and our cost of debt is around 7%. The year before, it was a bit different. But now, given that the interest rates have gone up and the expectation of GDP growth have been tempered down, I think this reverse is going to happen. And the question is that how quickly that corrects is a big question. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation and pass over the microphone to Mr. Mukherjee. Over to you.
Thank you, Ritubrata. Thank you for covering the very important part of the logistics part of which the budget had to offer, primarily with regard to railways, the roadways, which needs more of investment to come in the days to come. Primarily, I was surprised to note that our roadways network is just next to US. I mean, that's really news for me. I mean, I was not aware of this. So, which means, primarily the steel industry, as you know, we need to, for every ton of steel, we need 4 tons of material to be moved. 1.6 tons of iron ore, about 2 tons of, let's say, coal, and a little bit of fluxes. So if you put it together, that makes it 4, plus 1 ton of finished material makes it 5. So to move to produce one or to market 1 ton of steel, you need 5 tons of materials to be moved. Where logistic plays a very important role, and that's the reason why you see this seaborne iron ore trade doing so well. Because the moment you have a captive port available to you, movement becomes a lot cheaper. If you, for example, a plant like Vizag Steel Plant, or let's say SR, which is now ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel, they used their barges to move the raw materials and finished goods right from their own ports that they have. So I think we need to really improve on our roadways network, and good that you highlighted that. And it was a perfect interpretation of what the steel industry should be expecting in terms of growth in the days to come. The railways, of course, is one area where the steel industry is likely to benefit. Now, Dr. Firoz, would you add anything to the final comments before we wind up?
Not really. I mean, the point is that what I had already mentioned, that from a macro point of view, I mean, one has to bother about 3 issues: the equity, distributional equity, that the government has taken care of through various kinds of social security measures. And then you have growth, which is a challenge at this moment. And third is stability. Stability is largely dependent on externalities. It's just not that your internal policy can actually bring in a stable framework of operation of the economy. Now, one will have to take a call on that, but as such, we are not off the mark in this, and we are pretty well balanced in all these 3 aspects, and should work properly, unless what all of us are fearing is a global recession 2023. I mean, that's we can feel it. I mean, irrespective of the fact that there is some good news about inflation, there's some good news, but the war in Ukraine, there's a kind of tension in Indian border, the kind of tension in Taiwan, in Southeast Asia. The global geopolitics is such that it might land us up in a very, very critical economic situation. I mean, not the country as such, the global economies. And supposing EU has a problem, China has a problem, Russia is already having a problem. With all that, we ourselves will get entangled into it, and we have to pay the price in terms of loss of market trade. So that's what is worrying. I mean, I'm sure nothing can be predicted, and predicting the unpredictable is our business. So we will continue to do so, factor all those into our analysis, and hope everything goes well with us and everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Firoz. Dr. Mukesh Kumar, would you like to add a final comment before we close the session for today? You are muted, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Dr. Mukesh Kumar, you are muted.
Okay. Just I wanted to add, Mukherjee sir, what you have told in the last, is that for every ton of steel, how much material need to be moved. And the government, what action has taken for first and last mile connectivity, infrastructure, where they want to connect all port, railway for coal, fertilizer. They have mentioned very categorically in the budget. And they have earmarked around 75,000 crore rupees for those type of connectivity only, last mile connectivity, so that our logistic cost is reduced and we can become competitive in our various product, whether it is related with steel or whether it is related with this thing. So I think that is going to play a major role. Another thing is, when we were talking about gasification, the way government has given a lot of money to develop technologies for indigenous utilization of the coal. And like whether it is Thermex, whether it is IIT Delhi, whether it is Engineers India Limited, whether it is Simfer. So they have engaged 4 institutions. And I think government is very clear that we want to promote this thing. We want to become Atmanirbhar. And the type of initiative and the type of announcement they have made in the budget, definitely it will have a major impact on our steel sector. And steel sector is going to benefit not only in terms of our reducing OPEX cost, but reducing our other cost also, like transportation, logistic, and other things. So that is my takeaway from this budget. Thank you, Mukherjee sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mukesh Kumar. Thank you, Dr. Firoz. Thank you, Ritobroto. With that, almost 3 hours, 7:30, it's going to be 7:25. So almost 3 hours that we spent today. And I personally thank all of you. And those of you who have been listening to us on YouTube, as well as on Zoom, my special thanks to all of you. Thanks to Mr. V.R. Sharma. In spite of having a meeting during that period, he was able to join us. Thank you, Mr. V.R. Sharma. Thanks to all the panelists who are with us, right from Mr. Vinay Shroff to Mr. Sumendra Jain from SMS. Unfortunately, Rajiv Moitra, my good friend from Deloitte, and Mr. Vinayak Vipul from Ernst & Young, they could not join because of last-minute travel plans by Mr. Vinayak Vipul, and Rajiv is not keeping well. So that's the reason they could not join. But anyway, special thanks to all of you for joining us. And let me especially thank JSW and JSPL for their support in sponsoring this event today. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks.